What is up, Cabbage Crew? Welcome to our full review of Netflix's Avatar the Last Airbender. It is Matt and John here talking about our final thoughts before we move on from the series, or the season one, but see, this is season two. So we'll jump right into it. Let's first start with how about this? Well, we'll just start with our overall thoughts.
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna pass it to you. What are your just from watching all the other reviews? I feel like it's gonna be a really positive score that you're gonna give this. Um,
You got that right.
yeah. So go ahead and give us all your final thoughts before we move on.
Yeah. So this was a journey, that's for sure. It was just like the OG. It was a journey. Different kind of journey, but a journey nonetheless. Um I I agree with and I can see why the original creators left the meeting rooms and started their own um studio, Avatar Studios. I could definitely see why. After watching it, and you know, Netflix people wanted to go in their direction, and the original creators wanted to go in a different direction.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I mean, I can see why after watching this, and I totally don't blame them at all because I think they um like storyline is relatively the same, relatively the same plot points. Um, but it's how they got there is what is the biggest issue of the whole whole series. I mean, I partly don't think this series should have existed. To be honest with you, um, I there are obviously good. There's positives and but for me, there's a whole bunch of negatives. For me, characters, I was not attached to any of them. Like maybe Sokka, um, and maybe Firelord Ozai actually a little bit. Uh, Other than that, like I wasn't drawn in at all to anybody. The dialogue, it it gave the original series a bad name. Like it just put a it just put a bad taste in my mouth with that, and I it just did a disservice to the show. It did. Um, Acting awful. I Again, it's all about being invested. I was not invested for these reasons, and uh, there was no emotion involved in this show for me. Uh, I guess the biggest moment of uh, any type of emotion that I felt was when Momo could have died. Like that was probably the one thing that I was like that touched something. Not a lot, but it did. Um, I don't see how anybody if they're at like a real true fan of the show, I do not see how they can classify this as good at all. I would like to hear if you have those opinions. I'd like for you to share them so that I can understand. But it's really hard for me to do that right now. But I want to hear why you think it's a if you have that opinion, if you think it's a good show, I'd like to know why.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts. I think there's uh two okay to good episodes. That's it. Um, yeah. I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I think the CGI was good. Um, in terms of a positive. I thought they displayed all the
Well, we'll talk about
world
the
building.
positives. We'll talk about the positives in a minute. I
Okay,
know you're giving us the overall, but you gave us a lot of negatives, so I'll just jump on my negatives really quick overall,
sure.
and then we'll do some of the positives. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think the problem about the series, and again, I think the showrunners left relatively early because of this. I think the overarching problem is that the director didn't have control of his own show. Um,
No,
he didn't understand concept. Again, I'm okay with changes, but concepts that he would even create that were new concepts to the show, they either didn't continue, or it didn't make sense, or it wasn't portrayed well, or just wasn't clear. Like, you would sit down and be watching, again, going back to um, Hey Bye. It's like this whole thing about Hey Bye, and then they go on their little journey, and it's like, okay, well, whatever really, like, what happened to that town? I mean, I know the people came back, but like, so I guess Hey Bye was just very much a red herring, but that's still actually there. Like, it's almost like the creators wanted to do so many left turns and changes to make the fans think it was going to do something, and then end up being something different, that like half of it didn't make sense.
right.
Um, I think across the board, the director did not do a good job. The writing was atrocious. I mean, to the point where we were like, can we get through one episode without cringing? And that's why, like, I think the last couple episodes, you were even like, oh, I didn't cringe. It's a little bit better. Like, the status quo was, can it not be horrible? Um, Acting, again, the acting wasn't great. I don't blame the kids that much, because when you're a child actor and you don't have too much experience, and you have to have, you have to take on a big show like this. If the directing's not there, if the writing's not there,
Right.
what
Everything
can
has
you
to
do?
fall in line. Like
Right.
everything touches on another. Like the acting, dialogue, it connects. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
everything's connected.
that's right.
But again, just not picking on any direct like actor in particular, but the kid that played Aang didn't feel like Aang.
No.
The girl that played Katara for the majority of the show didn't feel like Katara.
Mm-mm.
And when I say doesn't feel like them, I'm not even talking about, like, take away the acting ability, take away all of it. They just didn't feel like that character at all. It's like, if you were to show me this character and it was in a different show, I would have been like, how's that Aang? That's not Aang.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I associate that kid with Aang is because they put an arrow in his head. They call him Aang, and it's an Avatar Last Airbender. But that's not the same. It's not even remotely the same character.
Right.
The guy that played Sokka, okay, like, if you asked me 3 or 4 character traits about Sokka, it's like, okay, sarcastic, wants to be a leader, but is kind of not qualified at this point, and but wants to live up to his potential. Um, you know, kind of a ladies' man that falls on his feet all the time, but is like somehow still like kind of smooth with it, and is
Right.
funny by doing it. Cares about his sister. Like, these are all qualities that Sokka is. Sexist, but where's that? No, but those are all qualities that Sokka was, and those are qualities that we see in Sokka in the show. When you think of Katara, motherly, strong, kind of stubborn in her own
Well, yeah.
way. Um, None of those things are like even portrayed in this show.
Right.
Um, Aang, happy, joyful, kind of shows a little bit of trying to run away from the responsibility in a childlike way. Um, and we really, the only thing we saw from Aang in this show that was his quality was the idea that he had the weight on his shoulders on him, and he was kind of let down by himself because he ran away.
Right.
But again, in
Like
this show,
he's letting it get to him. Yeah.
yeah, but in this show, he didn't even really run away. He keeps saying it's his fault, but it's like, dude, you went out for a stroll and you were
Mhm.
heading back. You were heading back when you got frozen. So, like, is it really your fault? Like, whatever. Um, so it's like, and again, that's another change they made, that now it's like, well, they have this whole theme of him not being there and feeling sorry for himself, but he didn't run away.
Right.
He literally just went for a stroll and was heading back when the waves picked him up. So it's like, okay, well, that new concept they created didn't make sense to the rest of the story of how these characters are. So,
Right, and one can say like changing that aspect, right? When you run away, you're not facing up to your problems and issues. Where like just going for a stroll, uh, and coming back, it's just a what just a surprise. Like what do you learn and take away from it?
right.
Whereas in the original, it's like you face your issues instead of running away from them. Like that's the whole point.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's just like there's something worse about being like I ran away from my problems than I just so happened not to be there. You know,
Right,
like Aang just so happened not to be where they were when they all died. So it's like that's not really like you were just upset because you weren't there to help. It wasn't because of how you ran away.
right.
But anyway, going back to it, just all these characters they changed, and they just didn't feel like the characters. Writing, acting, directing,
Yeah.
pace of how these characters grow, just having that feeling that it's like so. Like, when you watch any remake, I feel like that's like very much the number one goal is like, are you watching this character that you liked on screen in live action? And the writing might be messy, there might be some messy scenes, but I think going to one of my favorite live action characters recently, and I think a lot of people love Marvel. I think that's why people love Tony Stark as Iron Man because it's like man, or Tom Holland as Spider Man, or Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Chris Evans, because like man, this is the character that I was reading, and they are
Hmm.
now are the movies perfect? No, but like this is the character. Like I am
Hmm.
watching this character. This is like who they are. It's like now to the point where Marvel like is like yeah, we're just gonna put Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man on the comics now. Like we're just gonna put these like actors and just make their faces what the comics are for the most part.
Right,
Um, and so it's like I didn't get that sense with Aang and Sokka, and I mean a little bit with Sokka, and that's why I think we both enjoyed Sokka. But that was like my main issue I think throughout all 8 episodes, and that's why I feel like I gave worse ratings to the end because by the time we got to the end, I felt like I was like watching a shell of what the show is. I was
right,
like, okay, this isn't really Avatar. I mean, I was even joking a little bit, like calling it, Avatar, the Netflix series or something. But like,
right,
it's like this really isn't Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is just something else that's trying to be Avatar: The Last Airbender.
right. It's
Um,
true.
and I think we agree when it comes to the overarching like problem, which is the writing, the directing, the acting. Those are the big issues. Um, Now, before we go on to the positives, because you were about to talk about positives a little bit,
Yep.
is there one or two plot points that you just hated before we go to some of the stuff you liked? Like things that like I wouldn't say ruined the show, but it's like maybe you ruined the show, but at least took you out of an episode or two. And it's like, why did they even make that change? And maybe try to understand why they made the change, or just not.
I mean, I think one of them you definitely would agree with me. Boomy, the Boomy episode, episode 4. Um, Very cringy, very bad. I wanted to throw my remote at the TV, and football's not even on. Like,
Yeah.
um, I yeah,
Spoiler alert: Steelers are going 10-7,
I
9-8.
11-6, but yeah, I mean, so the Boomy episode 4, um, and honestly, one that I just shook my head at was Sokka and Katara going to the spirit world.
Yeah.
Like yeah, those
I
those
mean,
two out right off those two right off the top of my head.
how they see, I don't even mind them going to the spirit world because it's been shown that humans, like Iroh's been there. Like it's
But
been
Iroh can
listen.
go because for obvious reasons. Where Sokka and Katara, what makes them so special that they can go?
Well, so Sokka did go to the spirit world in the show. He got dragged in by Hate-By. So like I'm
Well,
okay.
okay, but that's like a different circumstance.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm okay with the characters going into the spirit world. It's how they got there. If there was something where Hate-By grabbed Sokka and then
Right,
them two are
right,
chasing them, and then Aang grabs them and Katara grabs Aang at the same time, and all three of them go in. And then there's maybe a scene or two where they're chasing Heibai and they end up getting Sokka.
Just
That's
like the
that's
original show.
that's just like the original show, but then now they're all in the spirit world, right? Um, I would have been fine with that, or have it the space stealer, or I would have been okay with that. But it's just how they got there. Another thing I really didn't like, and I semi like started coming around to it by like because by the end of the show, but at first I really didn't like the Kyoshi stuff they did because I felt like they just took Roku's character and what he's
Yeah,
supposed to do and made it Kyoshi because people like Kyoshi. Um,
right.
and then they started making sense of it with the temples, and it's like, okay, every last avatar has a statue. If you go to the statue, you're able to communicate with that avatar due to reasons. Okay, it doesn't have to be any specific time. It doesn't have to be solstice. Like it can just be any time. It's like, okay, if you want to play with that just to bring in the past avatars, I'm okay with that. But and I think you'll agree with me, how they made Roku not only not only like not a main character of an episode, but just a throwaway gag character. Like the only, but realistically, the only reason why the whole face stealer stuff even happened was just to make Aang alone, so the blue spirit stuff could happen. I
Right.
understand that, and it's a good way to introduce the face stealer and introduce that whole like idea. Cool, but then to have a uh, to essentially just have Aang have to go find Roku. If he was to go and find Roku for an actual reason of how to take down the face dealer, but it wasn't even that. It wasn't even that. It was like a MacGuffin, dumb little like quick little fix. It was like, oh yeah, just give him that MacGuffin and go give it back to him. And it wasn't even like a real resolve. I just felt like it was such a lazy way of being like, how can we combine three or four things? That I think that whole Roku stuff was horrible.
It
Didn't
was, yeah.
didn't and it's like it really took me out of like two or three episodes to be honest because it took me out of the Kyoshi episode. It took me out of that Roku episode, or at least the first half of that episode, first quarter of that episode. Overall, I liked it because the main episode was the Blue Spirit stuff.
Right.
But it just like there was just those things that it was just like you're taking away certain things in Avatar, and I get it, you're putting your own spin on it, but like the connection with the spirits and the connection with the past avatars, there's no reason to do it. They did it the way they did it for like plot points and not for like character depth development.
Correct.
And I think that's what a lot of the things they did was like instead of focusing on characters and building these characters to make us love them, because season one is very much world building, character building.
Oh, easily. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
they very much focused on how can we touch on all these plot points.
Hmm.
Some positives. What are some positives?
There's zero positives about the show. No.
Zero
Um,
indeed.
um, I think, I mean, I alluded to it earlier. The CGI, pretty good. I enjoyed seeing each location as it was portrayed. Like, it seemed like I was watching the original uh, cartoon, but with just like live action form in Kyoshi Island, Omashu, um, like vast majority, even like North and South Pole, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using everything as like an exaggeration, but like everything was,
The fired Sage Temple was looking
yeah,
good.
yeah,
The prison that Aang was in
mm-hmm.
looked good. Yeah.
Yeah, CGI was good. And I think they got some of the actor. I think like Sokka's actor was ended up being pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Ozai's character ended up being pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you got two good ones out of that bunch. That actually like lived up to what the character is or
Those
on.
two characters were very much done in a sense of like, not only were they acted well, but they were pretty much written well as well. Like they were
Yes.
like that's like what the character like that is what the character is supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And I did agree with some of the plot changes that occurred. I just didn't agree with the whole hodgepodge of just conglomerating season 2 stuff with season 1, and then in the same
Yeah,
episode, like there are things that just didn't end up working
yeah,
for me. But like one of the like plot like not plot changes, but like one of the new um
additions.
yeah, the new additions would be like um using the finale, right? Like Ozai was like, yeah, it's okay we didn't take the North Pole because it was, you
Distraction.
know, it was a distraction for something bigger. And then we see Uzula be head of Omashu, and it obviously reminded me of the Return of Omashu episode where Azula goes there, tries to get May on her side, and um, like, and she renames Omashu New Ozai. Um, and so like that's what that reminded me
Right.
of. Um, and I thought that
I was
was
waiting to see some.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's a decent idea. Um,
Mhm.
so I was okay with that. Um, I was okay with um, the June stuff, uh, and um, using her to get to the gang,
Which
um,
yeah,
the gang ang, the Ang gang. Um, yeah, there's but overall, I mean, I know we're starting in positives, but I'm just saying that those were the few that I did particularly like, but overall, it didn't flow.
yeah. I will say one thing that they did do well at is not changing certain things, but they did add a few things to give more context to certain situations. Like what you said, the boomy. Um, it would make sense while the Pole was being under attack. That's when they also went after Amashu. Um, that doesn't change anything from the story. That doesn't make anything different. It just adds something to what we already know about. Um, so like, and they did that a few times, and it's like I'm okay with some of the things they did when it comes to like adding on, like giving us just more context to that situation. The big thing was when they just tried to make complete changes of characters. One thing that really just annoyed me was when they were changing characters just to change them.
Yeah,
And
like
I
when
know back
we talked about when Boomy was the fisherman in the original.
right, they made Boomy kind of like what the
Yeah,
fisherman was in the original. Um, why? Does it? I mean, why? Even things, small things that like piss me off, like June saying like instead of being like, "Where's your creepy grandpa?" It was like, "Oh, where's your cute dad?" And it's like, and then she like winks at the camera, and it's like, and I know she was like actually winking at Aang or winking at I think it was Aang at the moment, but it's like, yeah, actress played a good like she did good, she did really good.
and she looked
So
the part. So
yeah, you said Sokka and Ozai. I had
yeah,
them too, and I also put Mei, Suki, and June. Not May. I'm sorry, not May. I'm sorry. June, Suki, and
yeah.
and personally, I don't think she was like the character, but I think people on the internet are really giving Azula a hard time. I think the actress did good. She just
For what she
wasn't.
was given, she did okay, but
Yeah,
it's like,
it's just
what does that?
that
What
character
does
was
okay
not
even mean in
the
this
character.
show? Like, what does that
Well,
even mean?
I think the actress did a good job for being what she was given, which was a bad written character who's not Azula.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like that's why I'm looking at. Like I think the actress did a fine job of being what she was supposed to be. I think the Blue Spirit did a really good job too.
Yes.
Um, no, I mean Zuko. I think Zuko did a good show. I think the actor played well at Zuko. The one character that gained like I kind of started liking more throughout the season was Zuko and Iroh. Them two, they ended up doing a pretty good job. I think
Oh,
again for what they were given, for what they had to do. I'm not talking about the writing. I'm talking about the acting. I'm talking about the
I
acting.
know. Yeah, I
It,
don't know how
it,
you.
it was the middle. It was bad, but I feel like the final two episodes kind of saved it for me. Um,
Oh boy.
I'm not saying again. I'm not saying they were good. I'm saying they did a decent job for what they were given. Were they Zuko? No. And Iroh? No. But those two actors, at first, not liking it. A couple really bad scenes in the middle of it that like made me be like, oh my gosh. By the end of it, I was okay with them. Going into season 2, I'm interested to see what they do with those two characters and how they continue those two characters. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't have too many other positives. To be truly honest, like I said, I think they blended a couple things pretty well. Um, when it came to like, I still think they did a good job with the Mechanist and Jet.
Oh
How
yeah.
the characters paralleled. Like I thought that
Yep.
was probably one of the better episodes, and they did that. They did that really well. Um, I mean, I know we keep saying it, but I really do think if the acting was better, the directing was better, and the writing was better, like this show probably would have a whole point up on my little grade system.
I agree.
When you calculate all of our grades of all 8 episodes together out of 40, because we did our grades out of 5 per episode. So 8 episodes times 5 is 40. You gave it a 16.25,
Yep.
which is equivalent to a 2.03. So about a 2. And then I got 22.25, which is equivalent to 2.78. So you gave it a 2, I gave it 2.75. If we're kind of doing the rounding, sticking to the 0.25. Um, and I think that's about it. Like you seem like you were pretty negative about the majority of the episodes.
Yeah.
Um, like there were a couple episodes, especially it seems like towards the mid like to the end, that you were like kind of getting behind a little bit more. Mostly probably because of the action and stuff.
Yep.
But like you were giving some better grades. And then for me, I feel like just looking at my grades here, it's like hit or miss. Some episodes worked, some episodes didn't. Really had to do with were there cringy moments, and did the plot they were trying to create like really make sense. Like some of these episodes are just were just god awful in my
Yep.
opinion. Like I don't remember ever giving anything less than a 1, and I gave episode 4.75. Like it
Yep.
was offensive. Like I was
Yep.
offended by that episode. Um,
We gave it.
um,
We gave it the same rating.
yeah, yes, you did. Um, yeah, so let's talk about season 2 a
Hmm.
little bit. Let's kind of go ahead of time or ahead of where we might be. Do you think this is going to have a season 2? Netflix, Rotten Tomatoes has it in the low 60s, I think, as of right now. Uh, I've been seeing mixed. I don't have the numbers or anything, but I've been seeing some mixed things. It was a number one Netflix show for a day or two, a couple of days. I don't know if the legs are there. I don't think it's in the top 5 anymore, at least in the United States. So I know it's an expensive show. I mean, do you think there's going to be a season 2? And do you want to see a season 2?
No. Um. They obviously have what they need for season 2 for obvious reasons. Um. If they were going to make a season 2, you gotta change the writers. You gotta change the directing. There has to be changes made. Um. Other than that, I really don't want to see a season 2. Do I think it will happen? Probably. I think there's enough Avatar fans that, whatever reason, they like the show, and uh, there'll be enough people to get it kickstarted because it's a money maker. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I don't want it to happen, but it probably will.
I don't know if this is true or not. I just saw it on like a headline. I saw the first like 2 weeks of the show made more money than One Piece did. Now probably because there's more fans of Avatar that
Oh yeah.
jumped and watched it than One
Hmm.
Piece. One Piece had really long legs. Um, so I don't know if that's an indication of anything. I think, like you said, there are enough fans that are going to watch it, and a lot of fans did enjoy it.
Right.
And I do think, like, even people like me who didn't like it, I gave it a negative review, 2.75. They come out in the season 2 tomorrow. I'm gonna watch it because I would be intrigued of how they take the show and the
Oh
story.
yeah.
And there is, not to sound like Katara, but there is hope. Um, there is. I mean, there again, there are some things that they did well. I think if they got a new director, they got a new actor, or not actor, writer. Some of the acting. Someone made a point about this in one of the chats I'm in. Because I made a kind of a funny comment. It's like a picture of all of them laughing together and taking pictures together and stuff. And I'm like, man, I guess it is the writer's fault because these kids like look like they have a blast together. It looks like they have chemistry together. They're laughing together. And someone did make the point where it's like, well, this is 2 years into being together. They're more comfortable with each other. They understand the roles more. They understand who they are as actors more. So,
Right.
you can make an argument they're growing with the show, and so they might just be better, and the writing might be better.
Right.
So I
I
think there is some things they can turn around.
I personally would like a viewer discretion is advised sign in the middle, or not in the middle, but in the beginning of this show to be like, before you watch this series, please watch the cartoon because it's better. Like I really like I don't want someone's first time watching this show to be this.
I think if
It,
someone told me certain things, like I think if I went into this show and someone came up to me and said, "Look, man, these are the 4 things you need to know before watching this show. The writing sucks. They're going to completely change Bumi.
sure.
Kyoshi is going to be bigger part than like if they told me the things that I hated ahead of time, so I was ready for them, I might have actually liked it a little bit more. It was
Maybe.
just,
Maybe.
like I mean, who knows?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we'll see about that.
Because like I've had a few people, and surprisingly like um a few of my friends who just started watching Avatar within the past like few months, like the cartoon, and then the show comes out. Like I can only imagine if they've watched like the live action and be like, dude, like this was like awful. Like why did you suggest this? And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
and it ruins your first time. It's just
it does stay. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the reason I would say why there's not it's a negative review, it doesn't give a good name to Avatar is because we are still saying as fans of Avatar, watch the anime first.
yep.
Because and again, there might be people just going back to One Piece because it's another,
Yeah.
you know, based off of anime, younger teenager show that's on Netflix. I would say that hey, if you liked this show, then watch the original. Where
Right.
I would say don't watch it. Like, oh, you liked episode 1? Stop. Watch the anime. You can go back. Like,
Right.
it's like avoid this as much as possible you can before you watch the original. You'll actually watch because it will ruin stuff in the original. Um,
Right.
so and that's an indication that the show didn't do its job.
Right.
Um,
I just think for us as fans, and like I said, like there's fans of Avatar that really do like this show,
mhm.
but objectively, or maybe subjectively, I don't know which verb to use, but but we deserve better. Like as like as fans of the show deserves better than what we were given
I,
because it's my favorite show. It's one of your favorite shows, if not your favorite show. Um, we deserve. I'm not saying like exactly like it because it's not going to be it, but we want as close to that as possible. Like that is the goal, and this did not even come close.
yeah, we want something. We want us as Avatar as Airbender fans. We want something to be proud of when we watch the show, and we
Right.
want to be able to feel emotions. It doesn't have to be the same emotions about the same characters and the same. All of it doesn't have to be the same. I've been clear
Right.
about that. It's like, and you have too. It's like we are accepting the things that they will change things, but they have to make sense, and we have to feel emotionally impacted by them. And I know there's a lot of people that love the Kyoshi stuff they did, and that's awesome. I think that looking back, I'm like, that is something that I hated. It's growing on me because of how they did the other Avatar. Like my biggest thing is, I just wish they did nothing against Kyoshi, but I wish they also did the same stuff with Roku.
Right.
because they made Roku into a joke, a parody,
Oh, it
and
was so bad.
and Roku's supposed to be Aang's guide. I mean, he is
Hmm.
supposed to be what Aang always talks about with Gyatso. It's like
Yep.
he's supposed to be the one teaching him about the spirit world and about the war and about his mistakes at the Fire Nation. And maybe we'll get more of that in season two, but they just did a really bad job with that. So, and I want to talk about that too with the toxic fan stuff, because it's like, there's a lot of people online, not to like bash anybody, but there are a lot of people online talking about it. It's like, well, if you don't like this show, you're not a true Avatar fan, or if or they just love it, and then you're like, well, why do you love it? And they're like, well, it's like it's almost fake emotion. And being a Marvel fan, I see this all the time. From I'm not going to tell you what to like and what not to like, obviously, but
Hmm.
like there are people that walk out of different movies and they're like, this movie was awesome, and I'm like, was it, or are you just tricking your brain? Like, was it as good as phase 2 and 3 movies, or are you just
Right.
tricking your brain and telling yourself that Ant-Man Quantum Mania and Eternals were as good as those movies, or Shang-Chi? Even like Shang-Chi's okay, but some people act as if it's the top 3 MCU movie
No.
ever. um and it's the same with I'm seeing with a lot of people with Avatar. It's like they're tricking themselves into liking it because they love the original so much,
Right.
and it's like they are feeling the emotions not because of what the movie is doing or show is doing, but it's because of how they felt in the anime, and now it's doing the same thing. So you're almost feeling that emotion. Um, there was no point in this entire show where I felt a connection between Katara and A on any
Right.
type of level. There was no point where we at any point. I mean, you said you were a little like emotional with the Momo stuff. I mean, there was no point where I teared, where I got emotional, where I
Right.
got goosebumps, um, edge of my seat. No, there was none of that in this entire show.
No.
I mean, sometimes I rewatch Avatar and I'm feeling emotional and I'm
Oh,
feeling
every time.
every time, or I'm on the. I mean, I know it happens in the chase, but I'm on the edge of my seat, like, oh my gosh, like, it's like it's like almost like an adrenaline rush, and it's this show did none of that. Um, so um, yeah, it's okay to be. I would say it's okay to be critical of a show you love or a franchise you love. Like,
Right.
I'm very critical of Star Wars. I think Star Wars has put out nothing but mediocre, bad stuff. Even the Mandalorian. People say people love Mandalorian. I'm like, take away Baby Yoda. 90% of people that love it didn't love it. So realistically, you love the idea of a character that's being marketed, not the
Right.
actual character. Um, and so it's like I, I I feel the same way about those. It's like certain franchises. You love the idea of that franchise and what it is, but it hasn't actually put out great content. And
Right.
that's kind of what I feel like. And that's, in my opinion, that's toxic, because then it's like you're not giving you're not putting pressure on the creatives to put out great stuff. You're okay with mediocre, and you're telling them that it's okay to be mediocre to maybe not even that good, because I'm gonna still believe it's good. Doesn't matter how
Right.
bad it is. So, um, so I mean, anything else to end this series, and probably never talk about it again until season two. But I mean, anything else we want to leave? I mean, anything else you want to talk about?
um. I mean, just I'm going to reiterate from the beginning. I'd like to know and talk to those who actually do like this live action series. I'd love to know your reasons why you act like. Do you like? To what extent do you like it? Like, I would like to know, like, if it's equal to the original. I want to know if it's like
Mhm.
it's almost there, but not quite. I want to know like details. Um.
I would love to know what broke the camel's back when it came to the creators leaving. I would
Yeah.
love to interview them one day and be like, what was the straw that broke y'all back? Was it just the fact that like you weren't too happy with where it was going, and then Paramount / Nickelodeon were like, hey, we Avatar Studios, like, we're gonna float that around you, and they were like, it's like, I didn't leave this job because I hated it. I just left this job because I was kind of unhappy, and another opportunity popped up that was way
Right.
better. It's like I would have never left if it wasn't for that opportunity. So that might have been a situation. Or was it something very much where they were like, we can't do this? Either of it, and it was pretty early on too. Like it might have
Yeah.
been just the episode count. Like they might have been like, look, we need to tell this story in at least 12 episodes.
Yeah.
So it might have been the episode count. It might have been how they handled certain things. It is funny how they talked about Sokka not being a sexist, which I've always said like is not a huge storyline. It's pretty much solved by episode 4 or 5. For the most part, I mean, I don't see Sokka in the end of season 1 or in season 2 ever being like, well, you can't do it because you're a girl. Like, it's pretty much solved by like the Kyoshi episode.
But it's a
Um,
lesson learned. That's the
it's a,
trick. Like that.
it is a lesson learned. But it's funny how that was the thing that came out 2 or 3 days before the show and not any of the other huge plot lines that they changed. It's almost like they
Mhm.
leaked it because they wanted people talking about something that wasn't that important,
Right.
just so if anything else came out, that was the thing we were talking. It was almost a strategy of theirs. It's like
And the Zuko arc about like, oh, it's about the throne, not his father's honor.
yeah, and that came out like a day or two before too. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I know those were like interviews and stuff, but like it is just funny how like they brought up a very minor story arc that ends like halfway through season 1 with Sokka, but they're
Right.
not gonna like bring up any of the huge storylines that they changed throughout the show. So
Well, Matt, there is a way for us to get the creators on and interview them
oh, how's that?
by liking and subscribing. People who Cabbage Crew
Get us
subscribing to this
a million
podcast.
subscribers. Yeah,
We need so many more cabbages on this crew.
yeah, we need to we need to have a whole merchant. What is it called?
Well, here's the thing. We're going to quote Sokka again. What we
Okay.
need is something that the cabbage merchant uses to fix his cabbages. A cabbage patch. We need a cabbage patch, people. Subscribe,
Yep.
like below.
Yeah, and did you like the series? Like John said, did you like the series? If you liked it, why did you like it? In what way did you like it? How much did you like it? If you didn't like it, also let us know why we're right. All right, guys, no more reviews. We're gonna go back to our weekly Wednesday podcast that is gonna be starting up next Wednesday, talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, mixing a little bit of comics, mixing a little bit of Korra, talk about some of the news and hopefully some of the shows that will be coming up here and movies coming up here that are based on the anime Avatar: The Last Airbender. So definitely join us on that journey that we're going to be on. Very excited for it, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you, Cabbage Crew.